How about fancy dress?
Oh, yes.
I can wear my suit of armour, Elspeth.
Good idea, darling.
Richard E. Grant's joke about his suit of armour plays on the obvious with Nell and I classic British movie reference. In this scene he produces a nice comic turn, as he does throughout the movie as the hapless Saltburn patriarch. But is his pretty thin character enough to summon up the right dramatic stakes to make Emerald Fennell's twist work, the fashion of a talented Mr. Ripley? For instance, when he pays Saltburn's little Ripley Oliver to go away, it's a well-acted enough moment, but it seems like a jolt in the narrative, as if the story needed to rush on to its next beat after the death of Felix, Richard E. Grant's son, who's the ultimately tragic belle jeunesse, pretty much Jude Law's character in the last adaptation of Ripley that we all remember. We also see Oliver's manipulation of the mother, Elspeth Caton, played by Bond girl and Gone girl Rosamund Pike, but never quite understand her motivation for finding him so endearing. Is it simply sexual between them?
Of course we weren't. Hello, Oliver, darling. Oh, what beautiful eyes. Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah,
This brings up the talented Mr. Ripley again, as has been highlighted in a very good podcast review of Saltburn by Brody Deschanel, who often seems far ahead of the YouTube movie critics game. It's not so much Emerald Fennell denying that there's a Ripley influence on her film, but that the whole of the Patricia Highsmith novel is about Ripley's ambiguous powers of seduction. They're neither terribly obvious nor consistently successful, and we see this problem visualised even more so again in the Anthony Minghella film, where Ripley is portrayed as a naif, a sexual open book, if with a psychotic streak.
You like everybody.
In fact, Matt Damon's character tends to endear himself to good, well-meaning characters. And in the film, it's only Freddie, Jude Law's awful friend, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's so terribly decadent and horribly inflated an ego that he can see through Tom Ripley immediately.
You stay at Dickie's house, eat Dickie's food, wear his clothes, and his father picks up the tab.
Literary Ripley resembles the profile of a psychopath. This may well have been Patricia Highsmith's message. Only psychopaths are truly able to accumulate wealth. So at least Saltburn comes around 360 degrees to agree on that, although for me it's enough to portray such a character as a sociopath, not to go down the full route of violence, which sadly in Saltburn ends up appearing or going down in quite a comic book way. That brings us on to the two best drawn characters in the film. Not Oliver, not Richard E. Grant or Rosamund Pike, certainly not the vulnerable, but very thinly constructed Felix. Nope. The best two characters are, I believe, Felix's older sister Venetia, as I've mentioned, and his other college friend from Oxford, Farley. I admit to a preference for female characters in both cinema and literature, so I do take a particular slant here, but my aesthetic bias also draws me to roles which seem well fleshed out and interesting from the outset. Venetia may be restricted to key scenes during the summer spent in Saltburn, but the older Caton daughter is a beguiling mess of a character, and the only character to give really captivating, memorable speeches. You'll see what I mean in one of the film's best moments when Venetia approaches Oliver in the bathtub and unveils his psychology in a metaphor of a spider. There's clear sexual tension between the two of them, and what I take to be the film's most transgressive scene. Anyway, Venetia seems both the wiser older sister and obviously Ophelia-like as she previews her off-camera end, but she's rendered by the actress as perceptive and anarchic in a canny way, all of which suggests that Emerald Fennell has got quite a good grasp on aristocratic neuroses here and how they function in a young woman in particular. A lot of this success comes down to Alison Oliver's portrayal of the other Saltburn child. both beautiful and mischievous, which is the ideal cinematic foundation for conveying a damaged soul. Rosamund Pike is perhaps too established an actress in comparison, having to work with too sketchy a creation in the glamorous matriarch. She can't really project an equivalent persona, and nor can Carey Mulligan, who plays effectively an older version of Venetia in the shape of another family friend who's completely lost in life. Still, though she doesn't really have the age nor the looks to pull off this idea of a doomed beauty, referring to Carey Mulligan, she does get a couple of telling scenes too. This character is likely what Venetia will become. Little wonder she exits sharpish stage left.
He always said I'd end up at the bottom of the Thames.
So far, so good.
A British actor who broke through in the pagan horror Midsummer, another example of young transgressive cinema if you like, is the other strong point of Saltburn for me. Archie Badekwe's performance as Felix's other Oxford friend Farley is a portrayal of what is this time a bohemian black American, what I take him to be a mixed race character, Farley, particularly in the Oxford segment, which is relatively little talked about in reviews. As a former Oxford student, as I'm sure she is, Emerald Fennell captured pretty nicely the clubby atmosphere of a small Oxford college with its tiny, cosy basement bar, beautiful lively looking out over the grassy quad, and the students themselves frolicking like good public school boys and girls in the grassy quadrants that make each college resemble, more or less, a monk's medieval cloisters. Then you saw the pine-furnished staircases to the college rooms and the promiscuity of the small student body, though there it largely involved the more worldly public school cast, whom, in the case of our boy Felix, seem to have their pick of all the ordinary girls, as well as be it girls who view the rich students as celebrities. One of my favourite scenes, and I believe this in Oliver's first college tutorial, they're both first years, where his English literature tutor, who's a pretty youngish professorial character, this chap in his 40s, an English guy, professes his old acquaintanceship and unrequited passion for Farley's mother, whom they knew each other at Oxford too. Perhaps then Farley's mother is British, she may even be white too, but what's most important is the character's waspishness and his calculating charm consistently come through in these rarefied circles. We get the sense that Farley is already a star in this liberal academic universe because he's both black and American. Oliver, being white, British and lower middle class, is a worker in comparison. He's arguably a talented young academic, but he's largely ignored too. And so he learns in his Ripley-esque way that hard work and honesty will get you nowhere in the circles of the rich.